Hey guys, it's Sarah. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about renting versus buying. Before we get started, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be notified whenever I have a new video uploaded. When it comes to deciding if you want to be a renter or a homeowner, you have to weigh the pros and cons of both. And it's not always obvious that maybe owning is better. It might not be the option for you. You need to decide how it will fit you. Choosing whether to buy or to rent is a major decision, and it affects your financial health as well as your lifestyle and your personal goals. Whichever choice you make depends entirely on you. Both require a regular income so that you can make payments on either your mortgage or your rent. And there's other costs, of course. Owning a home isn't always better than renting, and renting isn't always as simple as it seems. Renting doesn't necessarily mean you're throwing away money every month, and owning doesn't always help you build wealth. I mean, right now, people's homes are going down in value. And so if a person was to sell when they bought at the height, then they're actually losing money on their home. So first, let's discuss renting and the pros and the cons. Let's start with the cons so we can end on a more positive note later. Okay, so some of the cons of renting could be, well, you might have to pay extra if you have a pet. You can't control how many you have in the house. That's regulated by the landlord. Maybe you have a big dog and they only allow little dogs, and they'll charge you extra even for those little dogs every month on your rent. So you're making payments on your own pet. Another con is landlords can raise your rent when you're renewing your lease, and you have no control over it other than moving. Landlords can also decide to sell the property if they no longer want to be a landlord. Another issue that comes up when you're moving out is that you might lose your deposit if the house isn't what they think is perfect, or they say they have to replace, light bulbs, or maybe a screen got torn, or a toilet seat need to be replaced. They usually give you a big long list, and by the time everything's done and they charge top dollar for everything, you might not be left with much of a deposit at all. Okay, so what are some of the pros of renting? One pro is that you have the flexibility to move whenever you want once your lease is up. Another pro is that your rent is set at a certain amount and won't change. The only things you really need to worry about are paying your utilities. And some landlords will even pay some of those for you. Landlords also handle all of the maintenance and repairs. As long as you let them know what's going on, I'm sure they don't want to ruin their own home because that is their investment. Some landlords pay all the utilities in a place, especially if it was an apartment or student housing. Most landlords, if they're going to pay the utilities, try to stick to water, sewer, and trash. Because if you can't make the payments on these utilities and they have to get shut off, it can be pretty gross if you can't flush your toilets and there's trash piling up outside and there's no running water to take a shower or clean anything. Okay, so what if you want to buy a home? What are the cons of home ownership? The first one that comes to mind is that you have to put a lot more money in up front in the form of a down payment. A down payment has to be a minimum of 5% of the price of the home you're buying if you're getting a conventional loan. You can go to 3.5% with an FHA loan, and some places will let you do a rural development loan for 0% down, but there are other requirements in there. FHA loans and rural development loans also have a stricter appraisal and inspection policy than a conventional loan does. Another con of homeownership is all the repairs and maintenance. Those are all put on you as the homeowner. If a toilet breaks, you gotta call a plumber. If the roof leaks, you gotta call a roofer. Everything is up to you to maintain and replace. So if you don't have enough money every month to put some aside for those future things, it might not be worth it to own a home if it's just gonna fall apart and be in disrepair. Renting doesn't have as much responsibility because the landlord is the homeowner and they want to protect their investment. So when something breaks, they pay to replace it for you. Another fee that comes up with home ownership is property taxes. Although these can be rolled into your escrow account for your mortgage so that you don't really see them coming out in a big chunk at the end of the year, but you will be paying it slowly over the year in time. Another expense is if your home is located in a neighborhood that has an HOA or a POA, a homeowners association or a properties association. These come with monthly fees or sometimes annual that you have to pay to them to be part of this. If you do not pay them, they can actually put a lien on your house, and some can eventually go to foreclosure on your home if you don't get caught up on your association fees. Another big cost that comes to mind is that you have to pay all the utilities as a homeowner. The water, sewer, trash, gas, and electric utilities. The only way you might not have some of these is if you're on a well, but you have to pay electric to pump the well. You might also be on a septic system, but you have to maintain that septic system. And that can sometimes be even worse than having city sewer. If your septic breaks, it's a huge cost to replace a septic system. That brings us back to maintenance and repairs, having to maintain your septic system or replace it if it fails. The same thing goes for if your AC unit goes out and you need to replace that. That's a huge cost. Or your hot water heater. All of these things need to be saved for and planned for when you're a homeowner. Another cost that comes up is your homeowner's insurance. You might have insurance as a renter, and many property managers require you to have renter's insurance, but that's just to replace personal belongings and things inside the house. Homeowner's insurance is more expensive because you're paying to replace the entire home if something happens to it, such as having a fire. Homeowner's insurance can be taken and put into the escrow account that you're making monthly payments on, along with your property taxes. And your mortgage company can pay that for you, just like they're paying your property taxes. But you're just slowly making payments instead of one lump sum. It's all the same amount in the end. Another big cost of being a homeowner is the things that aren't in the home but are outside the home and can affect the home, such as keeping your lawn mowed and trees trimmed, especially if branches are coming over your roof and can fall down and hurt your home in some way. Pests are also a big thing to think about in your home. If you live out in the country in a more rural area, you might have to worry about mice. If you're in the south, like me, then there are many insects as soon as spring comes. You have to watch for ants, spiders. There's wasps that can build nests on your fence or the outside of your home or under windows. You might need to pay for pest control services to come every quarter and spray your home year-round to keep these things down so that they don't infest your home. And another thing here where I am in Arkansas is we get termites, and it's good to have a termite policy on top of your normal pest control policy so that they can be sure and spray for those specifically to keep them from eating up your home and losing its value. Most people assume that owning a home gives you automatic wealth building in the form of equity in your home. That's not always the case if the market turns down. If the market has turned down, you could try and sell your house really quickly in an effort to keep any equity that it may have gained over the past few years in your home, especially like we just saw in 2021 and 2022 in the housing market. Or you could try and stay put in your house for the next few years and ride out the downturn of the market and wait till things go back up again if you want to sell later. If you're planning on moving in the next few years though, when a market downturn hits, you might think about selling and renting for a while until things normalize. The worst thing that can happen to a homeowner in a market downturn is if they have to sell their home because they're changing jobs or they lose a job. And if they're selling their house, you want to hope that the amount they owe is less than the house is worth currently, because if they have to sell for less than what they owe, they're selling at a loss and it can take a long time to do a short sale, and you have to settle with the bank for the amount you owe over what the house sold for in the short sale. This is called a deficiency judgment. There are very few states that are required to forgive these. I believe Alaska, California, Washington, Oregon, and Minnesota, Montana. But most states don't forgive this, and you have to settle with the bank if you're going to pay perhaps all or part of it. You can hire an attorney to try to get these things worked out, but then you have to pay attorney fees too. Okay, so we've covered lots of cons on homeownership, but there are pros out there. And one of the ones people like the most is the sense of pride they get from homeownership and the fact that they own something themselves, like a house. They can do what they want with it. You can paint a room any color you want. You can change all the fixtures, different doorknobs, different lights, different fans. You can do almost anything you can think of as long as you follow HOA covenants if you have one, or city ordinance if you want to put an addition on your house and you have to get a building permit and hire a contractor. You could put a pool in your backyard. You can have as many pets as you want as long as you're not breaking any ordinances there. Another pro is that you have a sense of community and belonging where you live. You know that you're going to be there a long time because you own the home, so you get to know your neighbors well. You have more pride in the house and you keep it nicer. You might want to join the PTA at your kid's school or run for city council. If you are a permanent resident in that city or area, then you take a sense of pride in helping make things better. And finally, the big pro that everybody thinks of with homeownership is building equity in the home. This did come into play really big in the last couple of years when the market shot up like crazy and everybody was able to sell their house for way more than they had bought it for. This isn't always the case. It usually builds over time slowly. I think on average they say that homes build about 4% appreciation a year, and that's not including the equity you're putting into it every year, making your mortgage payments. So over time, you have a lot of money put into your house that you might not have saved yourself if you weren't making those mortgage payments. Then when you go to sell your house, you get a big chunk of cash that you can either use to buy another home, or you can put some away for retirement or invest it, whatever you want. It's a great way to build up wealth. Okay, so we heard a lot of pros and cons for both renting and buying. Which one's better? Honestly, there is no right answer. It all depends on you and your situation. If you want to not have that responsibility of homeownership, renting is better for you. If you're willing to put up with everything that's involved in homeownership, maybe you want to do that and think of it as building wealth over time. But that's not always a guarantee with owning a home. So you really have to decide what's best for you. I recommend weighing the pros and cons of the situation and whether or not you think you can afford major repairs if they come up in home ownership. Maybe you're really tight on funds and renting might be the better choice for you right now. In the current market, I can see why people want to rent, especially when your home might be worth less next year. I can also see why people want to sell right now because they want to get the equity in their house and keep it for when things settle down again. Well, everyone, I hope this has been informative for helping you try and decide whether you'd rather rent or buy a house. And I hope you can make a decision that's right for you and your lifestyle. Take care, guys. See you next time. No, that's, why can't I say what? This thing is so loud. Burped.